All right, everyone, welcome to another session. Now we'll be talking about web server. We're running out. So first, but what is web server? I've talked so much, we touch base on DMZ, and we say a web server is a system that handles incoming requests from client devices, right? Like web browser and respond by delivering web content such as HTML pages, images, or other media through the HTTP or HTTPS protocol. And the primary job of a web server is to process user requests and deliver the corresponding content. So what it does, they say they are on the fundamental to internet and web-based application as they allow clients to access website and web applications. And we're going to see that shortly. They can serve static content like images, style sheet, as well as HTML files, or can act as intermediaries to serve dynamic content, which might query the involvement of an application server or a database. And why do we keep mentioning all of this? Because as far as PCI DSS is concerned, of course, we're definitely going to define what we have in scope. And we can see, for example, this client going through the internet, sending their request, it will go to the web server. All right. But let's look at some of the functionalities or functions of a web server. The very first one is the HTTP request handling. So it says when the users enter a website URL in their browser, for example, you go to Google or Microsoft Edge, you want to go to our website www.unlimitedst.com, right? The browser send an HTTP request to the web server hosting that website. It was going to send it actually, GoDaddy is the one hosting our website. So it will definitely send it to that web server hosting our website. Then the web server then process the request and send back the appropriate resources or resource, which could be an HTML page, image, or whatever we are trying to query. And this is a typical example where you go to that browser, through that request where you put in that www.forexample.com or unlimited.st.com. When it goes go to that web server, and of course, the web server will definitely respond to it, right? And if we look here, this is a typical example. So I hope as of now we are really familiar with everything here. We have our switch, router, internet, wireless access point, laptop, desktop, computer, and you see now we start adding stuff to have a good diagram, right? But let's look, for example, say a simple website that displays a portfolio might consist of a static file. Those are the example. You don't need to know all of this. Do you see where you go? You can have the HTML page, the header, the body, title or image or whatever thing we're trying to display. But looking at the content of the web server, first it delivers static content like HTML files, images, style sheets or JavaScript file. This content is usually fixed and doesn't change based on the user's request. And for example, we also have what they call reserve proxy. As of now, each time we're talking about proxy, we know what that means, right? It says that in certain configuration, a web server can act as a reverse proxy, meaning that a reverse proxy forward request from client to an internal application server, which handles the logic and generate dynamic content. So this separation of concern improves security as well as scalability. For example, say a user requests a personalized page like a dashboard, which requires querying the database and running business logic. What happened at the request stage? The web server received the request for the user dashboard and forward it to the internal application. Okay. Again, that's just to improve security, which handle user authentication, retrieve data, and generate the dynamic content. And the response, the application server processes the logic as well as the web server request, but send the final response, including dynamic content, back to the client. So do you see? And then also talking about encryption, web server can handle secure encryption or communication over HTTP by implementing the LSL or TLS, encryption. I think we spoke about encryption already. So this encryption ensures that data is being transmitted between the web server as well as the user browser to make sure everything is being kept secure and private. For example, say a user is accessing an online shopping website and they need to submit payment details. Now, PCI DSS, we are coming. So going to the request phase, the web server established a secure HTTPS. Of course, if you go to our website, as I said, people will need to do some research on protocol and ports. You need to know secure protocols and port, right? So the web server established a secure HTTPS connection with the browser using SSL or TLS protocols, encrypting the payment details. Was the response, the web server ensured that the payment data is securely transmitted to the back-end system without eavesdropping, and it's very important. And then, but let's talk a little bit of PCI DSS. As I said, now the remaining slide, I'll try to link it with PCI DSS because now we have a holistic overview. So that we'll go to our PCI DSS training when we start going through the control requirements. We'll be saying you need artifacts from this, you check this log, we already know what it means, okay? So first, the web server play a crucial role in ensuring compliance with PCI DSS. And if you are new, again, I'm not really going to go into detail. Go to the first slide where I may playlist and I think start your GRC, is it career in minute or something? That's where you need to start your GRC journey. You need to go start there by understanding governance, risks, compliance, find your way up, vulnerability threat, and all those things. Okay. This again is just a prerequisite video that I'm putting out there. People can still learn and understand. But for us, because we are moving to PCI DSS, which is a core regulatory standards as far as that deal with credit card and financial details. But as a matter of fact, I'll be creating a new playlist where, as I said, I will upload 1/3 of the videos on YouTube, but everything is going to be paid on our website, or it's a training for a student, it's a combo, as a matter of fact, right? So we talk about the relationship as far as PCI DSS is concerned. It says that by securely handling payment, card data, and facilitating secure communication between clients, that's the users and other system. And that's why in PCI DSS, if I can just talk a little bit, we start talking about scoping, right? As far as data communication, it doesn't matter where that thing is going through. Just the fact that I have some form of linkage with the card data environment or payment, then is in scope, then we need to also start making sure they have the necessary security controls. And that's why we did spend some time to go through this networking basics with you guys. Okay. So PCI DSS focus on protecting cardholder data and ensuring that all systems involved in processing, storing, or transmitting payment information are secure. But let's say, for example, we have requirement 1, that's it, installed and maintain firewall configuration to protect cardholder data. If you are honest, you've been watching this video, you have, even if you're working or now as a student, imagine us just jump into PCI DSS. Boom, we are talking about firewall, we are talking about this without you all even having a background, right? How it even works. Now, you guys even know about the rules, the predefined rules. At least we've talked briefly about the different types of firewalls. So how do you even intend to know? You might know in as much as you have the network admins that will be able to provide those artifacts. But if you are working as a liaison for your company to help your organization achieve compliance or certification, you are facilitating, you are collaborating with the different stakeholders to make sure that they provide those artifacts. Tell me, how do you even know what you'll be looking for? Right? And that's why I felt the need, again, I'm just that type that I like to be a master in anything I do. I rather know it or I don't know it. If I know it and I can speak it very well, okay? And that's why if you look at the very first requirement, this is a security control requirement 1 for PCI DSS. It said install and maintain a firewall configuration to protect cardholder data. Don't bother about cardholder data, just if you get your credit card, that's something that we'll cover or we'll go to a PCI DSS training. Let's say how it relates to web server. Let's see. The web server needs to be part of a secure network that is protected by firewalls, right? Firewalls should be configured to prevent unauthorized access to the server and restrict incoming traffic to necessarily services only, such as, do you see, we have the different port and protocol, and we have defined rules that the admin are going to put. For example, a web server hosting an online payment form should be isolated in the DMZ demilitarized zone. Do you see? Now we start connecting everything. That's why we spend some time explaining this, because as I said, it's going to come handy as far as PCI DSS is concerned. All right. Ensuring it can be accessed externally, but does not have direct access to the internal network or the database where sensitive card holder is stored. But you have the database, information will have to pass through one layer, this place, that place, that place. Like when that information is passing through a secure means, then we also have to put it in scope. Okay, it's not just a database that we are accessing, everything that has to do with that process, processing, and information that's related to cardholder data or environment, then we got to protect it. Actually, that's the environment, because yeah, information actually has to pass there, right? So, for example, do you see? This is exactly what we've mentioned: install and maintain firewall. And do you see, when you have your internal, your DMZ, you have your web server inside your DMZ. So it tells you this is a cardholder environment, as a matter of fact, where the cardholder data is actually processed or is stored in the database. So do we have a firewall that definitely protects it? And that's why, again, I will repeat, I have to take this time to explain some of these concepts. But how it works in PCI DSS context, let's see. First, web server is a front end, right? It receives user input like logins, credential, or payment card details. Then what happened? It had to pass it to a back end, and that's why your application server. Front end, that's why we have it there, the DNC. It collects those information. Guess what? That has to do with PCI DSS. You get your login and orders in payment card details. It passes through that. And that's why we are talking of a secure means of communication. Do they have TLS and all those things? You understand? It's just so interesting if you are able to put the dots together, right? And then talking of application server, that's a back end, processing business logic, validates data, communicate with the database for transactions, such as verifying cardholder details or storing payment information. Then we have the database server now, which is a storage. It stores cardholder data and other sensitive information, such as transaction. Also make sure it's in compliance with PCI DSS standards. For example, when a customer enters their credit card detail to purchase a product, the web server collects data and sends it to the back-end application server for processing. The application server interacts with the database to verify the payment details or updated transaction record. Afterward, the web server displays the result to the users. For example, a success or failure message. So everything that we just mentioned, the web server, the application server, the database, they are all in scope, the DMZ. So when we are collecting artifacts, everything that is within scope, we need to make sure we collect those artifacts. Now, I hope it's making some sense. So actually, I just couldn't just go and requirement one, go to DMZ, go to website. Like some people tell me, like I don't like that. I just want to have a background knowledge, the fundamentals, have that foundation, then I can build from there. Understand? And this is just exactly what we have discussed. So you forward it to the application server backend, and then the application server, you see database is locked, then send it now to the database, right? But what is an application server? So now that we've talked on the web server, let's also discuss what an application server is, okay? I'll see you in the